the Eastern Empire addresses the dangers of artificial intelligence, quantum computers and encryption, AI manipulation of the stock market, push for one world digital currency, and Russia behind the Iron Curtain. With the first 7 of Britfield's movies in pre-production, the theatrical play April 2024 and the global book tours from 24 to 26, it is estimated that Britfield will surpass the C.S. Lewis and Tolkien series in worldwide sales. Wow, that is great. So tell me what brought you into wanting to do this?
Again, I'm sorry, but I'm having a hard time. I just can't hear you. It's the mic.
Okay, can you hear me if I do this?
Yes, there we go. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. So not sure what's going on with my headset. I'm sorry. So what brought you into like this realm and wanting to do this?
Yeah, it's interesting too. I'm down in Long Island right now. I was in the Hamptons yesterday, and I presented. Had 20 minutes to present Britfield in front of like 150 very influential people. So it's interesting to get it into a nutshell like that. But
right,
real quick, I'll do a quick overview for your audience.
Please.
But I'm original from Newport Beach, California. I was back east in Wellesley, Massachusetts. I did my undergraduate work in British literature and European history, which I liked, and I always loved the British authors. And actually lived in England off and on for about 2 years. And but eventually, after grad school, I got into investment banking, which is kind of interesting. And again, just trying to do the corporate thing and seeing what that was like. It wasn't a good fit for me. I don't think it's a good fit for most people, because I was dying to do something fun and creative. And I think we're all born with creativity, and we often lose that creativity. And so I was down to this boring seminar, Providence, Rhode Island, and it's when I had the idea for book 1, Britfield and the Lost Crown. And I just did it like simple doodles, like a circle, 3 lines, a basket. And I wrote it on the balloon, and I went home that weekend and started to outline on one piece of paper. It just really resonated with me. I saw this whole story coming to life. And so it takes place in current time, which I think is really important. So it's not post-apocalyptic.
Now I can't hear you.
The stories. And I don't include any witchcraft or demigods or superheroes, and we'll get kind of into that because the market's sort of saturated with that, and I think it's doing 2 things specifically. One, it's disconnecting kids from reality, and number 2, it's making them feel less than they are, right? If I just had magical powers, if I just had a wand, if I just had a super cape. And I think every child is amazing. Every child is born amazing. Every child is born with purpose. Every child is born with creativity and wonderful talents. And so the book series, we started to create it really just to inspire the next generation of children. So I sat down and started writing Britfield and Lost Crown. It took me 4 years, 2,500 hours to complete book 1, 384 pages. And it starts up in Yorkshire. It's a horrible orphanage called Weatherly Orphanage. It's about Tom, a 12-year-old orphan, been an orphan his whole life, and he's been Weatherly for 6 years, but this is the year he's going to escape. And that statement comes in within a couple pages. So it's like it's not a story about an orphanage, it's about getting out of the orphanage, and it happens pretty quick. And he's not going anywhere without his best friend Sarah. Somewhere along the lines, they commandeer this hot air balloon and start flying all over England, Oxford, Windsor, London, and finally down to Canterbury. And but they're chased by the illustrious detective Gowrie Stone and like half the police force in England. And you're sitting here reading the story, and it's like, man, that detective, he's a fanatic until you understand why, which doesn't want to give anything away. And this great royal mystery about, what is the Britfield and Lost Crown? What are the Britfields and stuff? So from concept and writing to officially launching book 1 of what eventually will become a 7-book series, it took 10 years. And you can relate to that. 10 years of discipline, hard work, disappointment, setbacks, building my team, building the business plan, building the marketing plan, doing massive industry research, just not just nationally, but globally, because we were positioning this book as a global series. And officially, 10 years later, launched in August 2019. Since I launched it, it's become one of the most awarded books in children's fiction, which is amazing. And I have a quick, fun story to tell you real quick. Please. In a second. Yeah, it happened yesterday. It's totally cool. And so I started, and so I kicked off a national tour, and I started driving. I drove 9,000 miles, visited 22 states, presented over 200 schools in front of more than 40 to 50,000 students. And I was doing it for a lot of reasons. One, obviously, grassroots network. No one knew who I was. We're launching the book. Great way. I mean, we sold thousands and thousands of Whitfield books, just as you're launching. That would never happen in almost any other sort of realm. But I was very curious to, you're covering current events all the time. What's happening behind the scenes. We're hearing about this or that, education, schools, different states. So I really wanted to get on the road and just, see for myself, right? And drove all the way up to Seattle, all the way over to Chicago. I was in Texas for a month, made it all the way down to New Orleans and all the way up to Memphis, Tennessee, until March 2020. Obviously, what happened then. And so
Right.
all the schools started to shut down on us, for crying out loud. But it was amazing. I mean, I was presenting in front of 400 students, sometimes 4 through 8, some of the top private schools. I did 4 back-to-back Title I schools in Texas, and the kids were amazing. And small schools, big auditoriums, and so private, public, Christian, Catholic, homeschool, charter, saw it all. And it's very interesting too. I mean, the kids were amazing. Especially like that kind of 11 to 13-year-olds, 10 to 14, 12 to 13, kind of that age range, that 5th to 6th graders, which is kind of the sweet spot for book 1, which is kind of based on that middle school model. 384 pages, conversation with 12 years old. And, but they were amazing. I didn't find any difference with the kids, whether it was a private school or a real rough Title I school. And as you're driving in, you feel it. You see the neighborhood, you see the school and stuff. But the kids, and we were really there to launch the series, but we were there to really inspire them. And I would hold a crowd of 300-400 students captivated for 45 minutes. And we had a presentation, and I made it fun. I bring in like Pixar, and we did like a little Star Wars trailer for like a minute. We talked about Star Wars a little bit, just about how successful the story it was, and what can we learn from successful stories. Actually, we do a little mini writing workshop within like 10 minutes. I'd say seven steps to writing a compelling story. And so it was just fun. And I really kept them spellbound. I didn't have any issues. There wasn't pitching. I think part of the reason was like I wasn't there for telling people. I wasn't trying to pitch some agenda. I was there because I cared about them. I wanted to inspire them. I told them the importance of creativity, that we're all born creative. And the importance of having, an idea. I told them, like, just as I shared with your audience, my idea, and it took 10 years. And I'm sitting here telling, 5th or 6th graders that, every overnight success takes between 1 to 2 decades. And the difference between a hobby and a profession is about 8 to 10,000 hours. And I'm telling that to 5th graders. And it's real. It's honest. And I'm like, you might have the right idea. You might have a great idea. We have ideas all the time. You might have a great idea for something in the future, but it might take you 3, 5, 10, even 20 years to realize. And I think just that resonates, it's sincerity, because kids they can detect that, right? 4th, 5th graders are like, something's not right. And we would get to the Q&A section, and it's just like hands would be going up. And some of the best questions I ever got were like from 4th graders, believe it or not. I mean, I got this one from a 4th grader, and she says, does the protagonist have to be a human being? And I thought, what a freaking great question. And, yeah, and I'm like, or the antagonist. And I said, no, like, it's like, it could be a hiker that has to get to the top of this hill during winter. And now the weather is the antagonist and stuff. But it was just like, freaking great question. It's like, it was just cool. And so I was there to encourage them, like, oh, I never thought of that, or thanks so much. And it's like, and so really I'm kind of laying the path here for where we're going to go. But it really was inspiring. It was amazing. It was like once in a lifetime type of thing to do. It was boots on the ground. It was doing my research. I'd pull into schools like an hour early. I'd talk to the librarian for like 30, 45 minutes. What are the kids reading? What's happening? I talk to teachers. What's the school system like? What are they pushing? What are students interested in? And then I'd be doing the book signings at the end, and we'd have a line of like 80 kids buying a book. It was just amazing. And I'd just be talking to them. What do you think of the presentation? What's your favorite part? What are you interested in? How often do you read? And so it really was an amazing launch of the series. And like I said, since then, it's become one of the most awarded books in children's fiction. And it's actually in the top 3% of all books ever sold within the same time frame. And I do believe that will outsell the Harry Potter series in the next 8 to 10 years. In fact, I feel very confident about that. And it's the complete opposite of the Harry Potter series. Really what we're doing with Whitfield and the Lost Crown and the trilogy of the series, the dynasty, is to counter the Harry Potter movement. And what's great about these books is, number one, they're based in real time, current time. Children are reading it, adults are reading it. They're learning about geography, art, architecture, culture, and history. I always have history woven through it. They're learning about, it's based on family, friendship, loyalty, courage, hope, and faith. And we're incorporating the 4 C's: critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. And these are the skills that are being taught out of students, and we're trying to put them back in, and we're trying to bring creativity back into the classroom and instill and inspire an individuality within each one of these children, instead of trying to get this sort of group think. Every child is individual, and help them with creativity. And so it's been amazing. We've had an amazing impact. So in the last 5.5 years, we've been at what I call a soft launch. So in July 2021, we launched book 2. Britfield and the Rise of the Lion takes place in France. That's 474 pages. Tom and Sarah are now 13 years old. And then in September 2022, we launched Britfield and the Return of the Prince. And it takes place in Italy. And Tom and Sarah are now 14 years old. And then in October of this year, a couple months from now, we're going to be launching book 4. I literally finished the last bit of editing 2 weeks ago. And it's called Britfield and the Eastern Empire. And what's interesting about this one is it takes place, it starts in Vienna, Austria, and ends in Russia. And we include 11 countries in this. And it's kind of our new model. It's kind of book 4 of a 7-book series, so it's sort of our keystone. And it's actually coming in at 460 pages, which I'm really excited. I was aiming, 18 months ago, I was aiming for 450. Not bad. And then book 5 will be in Asia, book 6 will be in South America, then book 7 will come back to the United States. Thomas are 18 years old, and we'll conclude this series. And our youngest readers, 7, our oldest readers, 93, 55% of our reading audience are adults. I'll stop there.
No, that's great. Well, then tell me the story that you had to tell as well, because I love this. It's important for kids to find that creativity, because they are trying to remove it from them, and it's sad because they can be so inspiring, and I feel like we got to just build them up in order to get them to continue to do that. So please continue.
Yeah, and this is a fun story that happened yesterday. You're the first one I get to share it with, so it's kind of cool. But I've been inspired myself by great writers. Obviously, C.S. Lewis, he's the master, amazing on the fiction side and the nonfiction side. And then Charles Dickens. I was a big Charles Dickens fan. David Copperfield and Oliver Twist. I think Great Expectations is my favorite. Jane Austen, the Bronte sisters, Wuthering Heights, Jane Eyre. So all of that went into my series and my books, if you will. Loved Roald Dahl, James and the Giant Peach, and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And I think James and the Giant Peach was one of the key figures within my Britfield series. It inspired me since I was 11. That idea of that big peach and then the birds and the floating in the air. And so I think there's that sort of connection with the balloon. And then, Charlie and Chocolate Factory. And at the very end in the movie with the wonderful actor, Gene Wilder. I've got a great story, if we have time for that, about Gene Wilder. And who didn't love that movie, right? And it's like, it was such an inspiring movie. And it was at the very end when they're in the elevator and they break that glass and they start floating over those little rooftops of England, and that just resonated me. If you look at the title or the cover of book 1, you'll see the red balloon. You'll see the orange-like balloon floating over these rooftops. And so I'm coming back full circle. I'm sitting at a table yesterday. I had 20 minutes in front. I was one of many speakers. This is like very, very high level thing I did yesterday. These are people from around the world, people flying in on private jets. And so I was privileged to have 20 minutes to pitch Britfield. So I'm sitting afterwards. I'm talking to this gentleman who lives in England, and we're talking about Roald Dahl, and he's like, I live in a building. I know his wife. Roald Dahl died in 1990, and he'd remarried, and so he lives in the same building as his wife. She's still alive, and he goes, if you sign a book to her, I'll give it to her. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's like, how cool is that? And I said, your husband was a huge inspiration for me. Thank you so much. And then I signed it to her. And I thought, isn't that really cool? I mean, talk about full circle. I never was able to meet one of the great authors that inspired me, but I'm now getting a Britfield book to his wife. And so I just thought that was really cool. So that's kind of a fun story.
That's so neat. That's so neat. And we'll definitely talk about Gene Wilder, but I was going to say, I think it means that, like, in these books, it's basically like the kids can travel around the world through the, these characters just because you're doing it in many different places. So, and they can learn about those areas and kind of what they're like without even having to be there. You can kind of bring them
Yes.
on a journey as if they're there with the, you know, the characters that you've created. And I think that's really neat.
Yeah, most of the feedback we've received, and we've received thousands of letters. I just got one this morning. I got another one yesterday, and it's always wonderful and inspiring. Actually, and you'll appreciate this, we get sort of into some of the undercurrents that in the books, you know, because we also cover a lot of things that are happening right now, which we'll get into, which are kind of fun, and it just fits this narrative. But it does. It gives kids or children or students or even adults a chance to travel and go to places maybe they'll never get to. And I'm also inspiring the next generation of children to go to places. And I know already there's parents that get back to me, and they're like, "Thanks to you, we took our child to London or to England, and we got to." That's the beauty of it. They get to actually visit all these places. You know, they get to go to Hyde Park and see the Serpentine Lake where the balloon crashed. They can walk Bond Street. They could go by the Brown Hotel where Tom and Sarah had tea in England. So it's like they can climb to the very top of St. Paul's Cathedral and then all the way down to the crypt, which is in the book. And kids are doing it, and they're just inspired to, like, sort of, if you will, get out of their mind, get out of their sort of bubble in their, you know, town or state or even the United States, and know, you know, that there's, I mean, most kids couldn't tell you where England is or where France is or, you know, any of that. And so, and what's nice in the books too is we have maps. I have 5 maps in every book. You know, kind of a big one of like France for book 2, and then Paris and all the streets and some of it. And it's not too detailed, but it's enough to give them a sense, to get them involved in the geography and see, oh, okay, so they're here at Notre Dame, and then they had to go all the way over there, and oh, there's the Eiffel Tower. And so it's just it's very, very meticulous. The craftsmanship takes me a long time. Like I said, it took me 4 years, 2,500 hours just to write book 1. Book 2 was 5 years, 3,000 hours. And what we did by the 3rd draft, usually, of every book, is we print it out on paper, and then we would reach out to elementary schools, middle schools, and see if there were any children that were interested in reading the manuscript. And it's a big assignment because it's, you know, they're 400 or 500 page books, and they had 3 weeks to read it, and when they were done, they'd fill out a 2.5 page survey, and then I would come in to the library all day, and like in little roundtables of 4 to 5 students for about an hour, I'd be talking to each group. What did you like? What didn't you like? Was there anything confusing? And so, you know, hundreds and hundreds of kids, if you will, participated in the Richfield series, and no longer was I the author or the teacher, I was the pupil, and I was there to listen to them and give great value to an 11 or 12 or 13-year-old's opinion and be taking notes. And so it's just been amazing to, like, sort of instill those experiences in them. So a couple of years ago, we translated book 1, Richfield Lunch Crown, into, it took me 18 months. We translated it into a theatrical play specifically for elementary and middle schools, and even high schools. It's a 90-minute 2-act play. It's got speaking roles for 30 actors, and it's got 28 sound effects, 54 digital slides, and it's a turnkey operation on our website for schools if they want to, like, license it for like 3 years type of thing, 18 months. And you can download the director's script, which is like twice as big, and it has all the cues. You don't have to think; everything's there. You download all the sound effects. You download all the digital slides. I mean, it's just turnkey. And then you have the actor's script. You have director's notes, everything they need. And again, it's a way to sort of, if you will, counter what's happening in schools and bring back really wholesome, edifying, family-focused stories into the curriculum, now into the theater programs. And, you know, the play has speaking roles for over 30 actors from 4th to 8th grade, and they're involved throughout the entire thing, which is cool. So it's not kind of your 2 main actors, and then, like, you get on, you have like your 3 lines, and then you're sitting back and wait, right? Like, in that typical. Right. Or even musicals. And I feel like I'm sort of countering the musicals, because it's not that I dislike musicals, but about 80% of the stuff that's put on in elementary and middle schools is musicals. And what it does is it alienates 80-90% of kids that want to go out for theater.
Right.
And they don't, it's not really an actor's play, it's just a musical. And so this is an actor's play, and it's great for kids to get sink their teeth into it and to do something that's current, that's real, a real place, not some fantasy like Aladdin Jr. or Frozen, which, you know, I know those are very popular movies, but again, it's mysticism, it's magic, it's fantasy. And so we're excited about that. And then we're just about to move into pre-production of the first of 7 major motion pictures. So we finished in March of this year. We finished the final draft of the script. That took about 15 months from start to finish. Lots of processes, lots of drafts and stuff. We already did a read through with 12 actors at a round table, which was really cool. Recorded it, took breaks, got feedback, and so we're excited. So we can talk about the film and stuff, but I just want to kind of lay out some of those areas.
No, I love that. And, because even if the children are reading these books, then, they can go and be in the play, and it's more inspiring because they're like, they can live it out. And I think that if there is a lot of, even just you going and speaking to the kids and asking them their opinion, that's kind of been, nobody wants to hear from kids. Oh, they're just kids. They don't know anything. They kind
Exactly.
of, and it's sad because they have so much input. They're very intelligent. And
Absolutely.
I think that, so like one of the, topics that we could talk about is like the creativity crisis, right?
Yes.
And how schools are killing that. So tell me just talk about that.
Yeah, I would love to. And it's interesting because we've done, I've been doing research for like 8 to 10 years on this specific topic. And a lot of things kicked it off for me with a TED Talk in 2006 with Sir Ken Robinson. And, probably many people have like never even heard of him, like Sir Ken Robinson, like who's that? He since has passed. But it was the most popular TED Talk in the history of the TED Talks. It's an 18-minute TED Talk, and the title is "Are Schools Killing Creativity?" And it's just amazing. You sit there and you ask yourself, why is this so popular? And it's just absolutely resonating, I think, with everybody that watches it. And then they watch it and they share it. And so I started doing my research, and there's a wonderful book out there called The Creativity Crisis. It's by Dr. Kim. She's out of William and Mary. I think it was launched about 5-6 years ago. And she literally, for like the last 20, 30 years, was doing hundreds of thousands of students. And she saw specifically in 10 areas where the creativity and all the attributes you would want children to have are going down at almost a 45-degree angle every single year. And again, this is all by design, based on an educational system that's a joke. It's an 19th century industrial model that was designed to teach, to prepare kids for the factories. And that's the truth. And it's never changed. You have 30 kids, 11-year-olds crammed into a classroom for 40 hours a week, and you're wondering why they're fidgety?
Right.
Are you kidding me? I mean, it's just like, it is the most unnatural system. And so in the areas of art is creativity, it's critical thinking, it's collaboration, it's communication. All these things are being, if you will, educated out of children. And yet, on the other side of it, creativity is the #1 most important skill set in the world right now. And that's a fact that's based on tons of research and statistics. It's not engineering, it's not technology, it's not mathematics, it's not medicine, it's not legal. And what's very interesting is this massive push, and we can also get into the AI and the dangers of AI. It's a push to AI, and it's either by the usual suspects that are pushing it, or a lot of useful idiots that are hooking their coattails to it because they want to be cool and like, oh, this thing's going to be amazing. In the next 5 to 7 years, 80 to 90% of accountants will be out of work because of technology and AI. 40 to 50% of medical fields, doctors, nurses will be out of work because of AI. Media, 40 to 50%, banking, and it just goes down the list. And so technology is going to be putting everybody out of work. And so the same people that are the cheerleaders are going to be looking for a job. But the one thing that AI cannot do is replace creativity, which is very interesting. And creativity is at the core of everything. And I know when you think of creativity, and I'm a writer, so you're thinking, oh, writing or art or music. Creativity is an absolutely everything. The foundation of all great inspiration, entrepreneurship, companies, ideas, marketing, you name it, creativity is at the core of it. And what it does is it teaches you to be nimble, to look at things from a different angle, to adjust, to brainstorm. It's very interesting too, kind of if you pull the curtain, most of the Fortune 100 companies, when they're hiring someone, they're looking for someone with a musical background. It's very interesting. It's never necessarily on the application. But if they see that you're someone that actually plays a musical instrument and reads music, you'll get a job 5 to 1 to 10 to 1, because they know people that play a musical instrument and read music are better managers, better under crisis, can brainstorm, and can shift and move when products or things happen. Because right now everything is very finite. You're learning this topic, you're getting a degree today that's worth absolutely almost nothing, for $300,000. And it's like even kids that are starting at 18 right now in the next 4 years studying a topic that probably a subject that won't even necessarily be around or relevant or replaced offshore or replaced by technology. So when you have the creativity, it's really the idea that you can learn. It's teaching you how to learn and to adjust quickly. How you can absorb quickly. You can have, it's great to have a mindset, whether it's English or engineering or mathematics, but having the creativity background, you can sort of see and shift and say, okay, how can I use this? Or this was what I was going to do, or this was what I was hired for, but now this is moving and this is happening so fast. And it's like, you're not like, oh my gosh, I'm out of a job. It's like, you can think yourself out of it. You can brainstorm yourself out of it. You can see how you can actually use it and adjust it. And so, so it's really cool. I'll stop there.
No, it's good. You're good. I mean, don't feel like you're over. It's this is for you to be sharing all of this. And, I think with AI, it's interesting too, because even just with all things, like you can go and you can prompt AI to create you some kind of a photo or whatever. They're even talking about having AI like rewrite the Bible and all of these things, how it's going to be so magnificent. And so I think it is funny, all the people that are pushing for it don't realize that they are the ones that are going to be pushed out because of it. And
absolutely,
it's dangerous because it's especially like even doing this, they could generate AI from us and basically have this be going, and people are none the wiser. They don't really, can't tell the difference. It's getting, before it was like not as well like learned or whatever, taught. I mean, it's self-learning, but it wasn't as good as it is now. And now it's hard to tell, like, if you were seeing somebody on TV, is that really them, or is this generated by AI? So it's dangerous in that aspect. And I think it's important for us to stay creative and to continue to bring forward, like, we wouldn't want you to stop writing books, you know what I mean? Just because AI could come in and do it.
And it can't. That's just it. The mistake people make is that, oh, well, it's creating art. No, it's not. It's plagiarizing art.
Right.
Oh, it's creating this. It's writing these papers. No, it's plagiarizing because it's pulling from other writers and other systems. It is not creative. It cannot be creative. Creativity is a gift from God, and we all have it. And we're born with it. AI doesn't have it, and we know where AI really derives from and what's at the very core of it. And it's not good,
No.
Now, don't get me wrong, and it's been around for. I mean, aspects of it have been around for decades. You know what I mean? And there's good like anything. It's like the internet was actually created to be a trap for all of us, and it's backfired, if you will. And God's used it. Like we're doing an interview. It's like I've learned so much stuff because of the internet. Stuff has been exposed because of the internet. So there's always good. There's always two sides to it, no matter how thin it's sliced, right? Or the cell phone. It's like I mean, it's an epidemic, and it's not. And there's so many bad side effects, and it's like people should be holding it to their ear because radiation, and it shouldn't be by your bed at night. You shouldn't have your laptop sitting when you're working on, laying down. It shouldn't be here. It's radiating into that. But with that said, I mean, the cell phone is pretty cool too. You know what I mean? Right. It's like I can be out and about, and it's like I can text, I can call, I can look something up. It's like I could run my whole company down at the beach. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It's so there's good and bad to it. So I don't want to be like just all bad, but it's just there's such a nasty push to it right now, and it's very, very, very unhealthy. So.
Yeah, well, and I think because people tend to put their kids on a iPad or give them a cell phone, and so they're not reading books like they used to. So I think it's so important to get back to that and to get off of technology and kind of step away from it and give them that, and so then it can inspire them to be creative as well. Now, you were talking about AI manipulation of the stock market. Now talk about that.
Yeah, so it's really cool. Let me close out real quick. Two things. One, on the educational model, it's interesting, and I've said this before in other interviews, but it's very telling. But a gentleman by the name of George Land he's a researcher and a writer. This is decades ago, and he was hired by the government to create a creativity test for certain industry, and it was a very successful test, for adults, because it's like they needed balance. They needed some engineering and some mathematics, but they also needed the creativity aspects. And he was so successful that he brought it into the school system, and he started to test 5-year-olds. And so he was testing 5-year-olds, and 5-year-olds were literally off the chart creative. 98 out of 100 5-year-olds were little geniuses. I mean, just brilliant. And I love that, because that's what God creates in every single child. He tested them again at 10 years old. 98% to 30%. And then he tested them again at 15, and it dropped all the way down to 10%. So in 10 years, same kid went from 98% genius, creative, 12% almost brain dead, mindless people.
Right.
and it's really the educational system that was killing creativity, that was destroying creativity. And it's interesting because everything was working towards these absolute asinine tests like the SAT, and that's a whole multi-billion-dollar industry. That's what these testing companies are getting, and it's just money laundering, basically. Call it what it is.
Right.
And what's interesting about the SAT test, it was actually designed by a gentleman for the military. He was working on it for 5 years. It was a type of test that he was for the military to improve performance and things like that. After 5 years, it was such a failure that he shelved it, and then it was eventually adapted into the educational system. Same thing with the IQ test.
Mm-hmm.
It was designed not to show heightened intelligence, because you can't test that type of intelligence with the IQ test. It was actually designed for the opposite. It was to try to find sort of areas that were flaws, or weaknesses, and be able to help you. Like if I was really bad in mathematics and I'm taking it, and the test would show that, and that would help to improve it. And yet it's now become this watermark. It's like, what's your IQ? And it's just like, yeah. And the thing about the IQ test too, hypothetically, if you're scoring a 120 or 130 or whatever the numbers are, it's like people think that they're stuck like that for the rest of their lives. It's not. I mean, you could improve at any time. Right. And going back to that creativity test, 30-year-olds were finally the George Land test, the creativity test. 30-year-olds were tested, and they were scoring 2% of creativity.
Wow.
And the difference is you can come back to a full 90 to 95% creativity. So you can be 40, 50, 60 years old, and you're like, oh, I'm not creative, or all I know is this, or I worked for this. You can come back to that world of creativity. Find something you love to do. Go back to that childhood wonderment. Was it painting? Was it writing? It doesn't mean that you're going to be a master artist. It doesn't mean that you're going to be a successful author. That's not the point of it. Right. What happens too when you're in that zone of creativity is so many things. You're relaxed. It helps with depression. It fires and all your synapses, and it works. Another fake myth is that we use 10% of our brain. That's fake. Right. We use 100% of our brain. So it's just like, and I've been probably like yourself, I've been relearning history for over 12 years now. You know what I mean? Yes. Pretty much everything you've learned is bunk science, total crap. Genetics, that's another total BS type of thing. There's a small fragment of genetics, call it 3 to 4% in certain children, that are born into a certain family, that might be a little bit more astute towards mathematics or creativity or music. But if it's not heightened and caught by, I think, age 7 or 8, then it makes no difference. And so the teaching, well, you just have bad genetics, or your father was stupid, all total BS.
Yes.
And again, too, it's all to undermine, God. Oh, God makes mistakes. And it's lies. So, but no. So it's interesting with book 4, Whitfield and the Eastern Empire, and this is kind of cool because there's always the main theme is like Tom and Sarah, and then book 4 it starts in Vienna, Austria, and they've been stuck there for 6 months. And there's this group which we introduced in book 1, the committee, and they're the behind the scenes. And you don't know much about them really in book 1, but you hear it. And in book 2, you sort of see them, and it's based on the Committee of 300, if you're familiar with that.
Yes.
Yeah. And so pretty much everything in these books, which is interesting, is totally real. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like all the stuff I'm bringing in about like the CIA or MI6, how they manipulate things, and oh gosh, I gotta think. But anyway, so in book 4, the committee is again like at work and with using a quantum computer and quantum encryption, and they're setting up the stock market, which they mostly own and run most of the Fortune 500 companies, which is true. And they've inflated the stocks and made them more valuable than they are. But what they're doing in this book is it's kind of a countdown, 7 days. And what they're trying to do is using AI manipulation. They're manipulating the entire stock market because they want to set it up and crash it, wipe out trillions of dollars, buy it back, pennies on the dollar, and then when everyone's broke, introduce the one world digital currency.
Right.
And if you don't accept the currency, you can't buy food and you can't pay your rent. End of story. And what just happened like 2 weeks ago with the
I
stock
know.
market. And I'm like, someone was telling me that too, and I'm like, oh my God, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, it's
Right.
like my book is like, are you kidding me? But it's not prophetic. I just do my research. I know how the nut jobs think. I know their
Yes.
goal, right? So it's really cool. So that type of stuff is in the book. It's not heavy, it's just a thread that goes through it. But it's what you said earlier. It's like I'm not teaching. I'm not talking down to kids. I'm lifting them up. And I'm
Yes.
speaking to them as equals, if you will, and I'm giving them some information and some history and some things like that. Fast-paced, fun adventure series. I had a wonderful comment a couple weeks ago from a woman, kind of in her 40s. She goes, "I absolutely love the Britfield series." She goes, "It reminds me a lot of James Bond, but with more characters and a bigger purpose." And I thought, what a great line,
Right.
So it is that kind of fast-paced, high-octane action adventure series. And it's all about, really, the main theme is about family and the importance of family, what that family means, and not always by birth or blood.
Right.
It's connections with people that, like you give your life for them. That sort of, a threefold cord is not easily broken. It's that kind of thing. It's like this knitted family. And so, yeah, but we incorporate a lot of this stuff. And it's interesting because about a month ago, I got a 2.5-page letter from this 13-year-old.
Oh, wow.
And it was really well written, and it goes to like our PO box type of stuff, and then we get it back, and so I read it and stuff, and it was incredible. So she was like asking me some really cute questions. She's like, like, what's Tom's middle name? And I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, I don't know, so
Right.
I had to come up with a middle name, but and that's between you and the audience.
Yeah.
And it was really cute, and her mom got back to me too, because usually I'm really good about getting back with the letters, but I got so busy and I was traveling, and it's really, and I said, oh, I'll write, I emailed her friend. I said, I'll write back soon. And like a couple of weeks went by, and her mom said, oh, she's checking the mailbox every day. And they're like, you're breaking her heart. I'm like, oh gosh. But she goes, no, she's like, she's in love with Tom. She wants to marry him. I thought that's really cute. But her questions were, is the committee real? Are secret societies real? This 13.
Oh, wow.
Which I obviously got back and said absolutely. So,
Yes.
but I'm telling you, we're hitting that audience, and she's a homeschooler, and so I say that meaning she's smart, she's well educated, she's smart. What's cool about right now where we're at as a society is we're in an educational reformation, much like Martin Luther 500 years ago, but it's in education, and we're in a homeschool revolution. We've gone from 5 million to almost 20 million homeschoolers in the United States in the last 4 to 5 years. That's huge.
Yes.
And the best, and I've been at some of the top, I mean, I myself went to some of the top private schools, but I through my tour, I've been at some of the most prestigious private schools and or even good public schools in Chicago or wherever it was, and the most well-educated children I've ever met are homeschool kids. Totally grounded, smart, articulate, not nervous, not edgy. Usually 1 to 2 years ahead of most of the others. So, like 14, 15-year-olds are starting to almost get into college prep courses and stuff like that. And well-read, creative, amazing. And I always love sharing this story, but I was on my tour. Remember, it was like 9,000 miles. So I was in Carson, Nevada, and I met someone out there that was setting up all these schools in Nevada, in Carson, Nevada. And Reno, Nevada, and then Carson. And so she's like, oh, we have this presentation at this homeschool farm. I thought, okay, and I didn't know much about it at the time. This is a while ago. And so, and you're always like, I'm very articulate. I'm watching everything. I'm absorbing. I'm seeing how things move. And I'm coming up, and it's a nice farm, plain, and there's a gate, and we punch in the note and come in. And the first thing that I saw that I thought was so interesting was, and these are the kind of things you notice, was because it was recess, and I think it was like 7 or 8 boys playing basketball, ages 12 to 17. When's the last time you've ever seen that at recess?
Right.
Never, right?
Yeah.
And there was something so cool about it, because it was like the 12-year-olds were esteeming to the older ones that had a leadership role, and the older ones had a leadership role looking out for the younger ones. And there was just such a wonderful sort of synergy there, if that makes sense. And so I parked my car, and this little 12-year-old, nicely dressed girl with her hair kind of pulled back comes out and says, "Are you Mr. Stewart?" And I said, "Yes." And she reaches out, shakes my hand, and she says, "Thank you so much for coming today." And I was like blown away. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like a future senator.
Right.
That's a future
Yeah.
CEO of a company,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's like I was just blown away. I'm like a 12-year-old, like with that kind of like just astuteness and gumption and professionalism, and I'm like, wow. I'm like, I wish you were my kid. You know what I mean? So it's just cool. So I want to kind of bring that thread in. So that a lot of cool things are happening right now in the education. It's not all doom and gloom.
Right.
And I think that spark was set. That spark in a powder keg was set obviously in 2020. And again, it's a massive backlash with what they're trying to do and the enemy and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it was very destructive. And unfortunately, millions of kids, were traumatized through it and will be, and it sucks. But a lot of good's coming out of it. And in my opinion, you're seeing the beginning of the end of a sort of socialistic educational system that is frankly crumbling.
Yeah.
And these freaks and the fanatics and demons will fight and kick and scream for the next 5 to 7 years, but it's over, in my opinion. And you're seeing this massive shortage of teachers. You're seeing teachers being laid off in districts because 20 to 30% of kids aren't coming in there anymore.
Right.
You don't get them in the factory institution anymore, the socialistic institution. And it's interesting too, when I was on my trip, and I was in Memphis, Tennessee, just did 4 schools back to back, Monday, Tuesday, and all of a sudden it's like we were getting cancellations, and I was like, oh, because I was like in the heartland of America. I couldn't wait to like get to there, and I had to turn around and come all the way back, and so I'm driving back, and I said, and I knew the whole thing was bunk, but I said it'll be very interesting to see how many parents will send their kids back to school when this whole facade is over.
Right.
And I started asking some of my friends, and they're like, what do you mean? And I said, I'm basing it on 3 things. I said, number one, for the first time, parents are going to learn what their kids are being exposed to in school.
Yep.
And learning, and they're going to be horrified, blown away. They're teaching you that.
Yes.
And number 2, how far behind some of their children were in certain subjects that they shouldn't be. And number 3, when the child could sit down and focus on their work, they could probably a day's worth of work, they accomplish it within 2 to 3 hours and have the rest of the day to, I don't know what, be
Right.
a child and grow
Right.
up and have fun and go play and do something cool and listen to music and building blocks and paint something and whatever it is. And so and then I started seeing, like, within 12 months, I started seeing statistics that 20 to 30% of parents aren't sending their kids back to traditional schools. And you can read about this in the New York Times, which is just a rag. I wouldn't embarrass my birds to line the bottom with, the New York Times.
Right.
It's not even worthy to flush down the toilet. But the point is like, you don't read that stuff, but this is the stuff that's happening. And so it's exciting. And so it wasn't surprising to me what's happening, in the educational system right now, specifically on the public side of it. And I mean, it is crumbling. So.
Yeah, and it's like you were saying, all of a sudden parents were able to see what their kids were learning because they were online like this,
Yes.
and they're like, "Wait, what? Is that your teacher? Did they just say that?" I mean, they were so shocked, and so it's a good thing. It's a blessing in disguise that happened, so parents could actually see. And I remember, growing up, and they always demonized, homeschooling kids. Oh, they're
Right.
just
Yeah.
weirdos. They're just like they can't, they don't have friends. They just said all of these things that to try and make it seem like you don't want that. You want to come to a public school where you can be around all these people and whatever, but they're indoctrinating these children. So it's sad to see because I love that you're like sharing this with the kids, like the reality of the world around us in a story type of fashion, but that is so that they can start to see it. Whereas like in school, you're not going to learn that kind of stuff. They're going to mainly tell you that it's not true. That's just a conspiracy theory. And I think it's important for kids to understand like what kind of world we're in from the get-go, as opposed to lying to them and making them think it's cupcakes and rainbows, when it's not. But it can be. We can get back to that kind of a place. But they've tried to just, kind of even like with kids not being able to sit still, like they want to medicate them. Oh my gosh, they need, Adderall or something because they just won't sit down and listen. And it's like, yeah, but think about what they're learning. I mean, I always thought like in school that whatever I was learning, what is the point of this? I'm like, I don't know when I'm going to use this.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I've educated myself more outside of that in the past, 6 to 8 years, that it's like, it's pretty amazing because you actually are in control of your education,
Yes.
and you're not allowing them to tell you what you need to learn. And it's like, oh my gosh. And that's why the internet and different things like that are good, because it opens up the world to us so that we can come in and, bring in other stuff that we care about. And I think even with homeschooling, it's like you can ask the kids, like, what do they want to learn about? And then you can incorporate math into baking. We got a
Sure.
quarter
Yeah,
cup
there you
here,
go. You
whatever
got
it
to make it
is, but it
relevant
makes it
too.
fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And you're
Yes.
absolutely right. It's so funny. And again, too, I didn't know anything about homeschool until about 6 years ago. I was traveling, and I was in, I think it was Asheville, and then Salem, North Carolina. And I was actually staying with the family, the daughter of the founder of Salem Media Group, of all things. It was really kind of cool. And I met her brother, Stu. He's like kind of just, he's totally cool, crazy guy. He's like really cool. And I did Truth Network or True Network out of, so he kind of went out on his own and has this whole broadcast. And I just remember like, so I was meeting him, and he's like, "Oh, let me show you around." And we're driving around in his car, and it was just like the most interesting experience, because he's going around to the old town of Salem, which is really cool. And we picked up some like bakery stuff, and then he's like, "Oh, I got to pick up my friend real quick. Boom, 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 get this guy." And I'm like, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" He gets in the back seat, and then he's like, "Oh, I'm doing this interview over here." And it was my first introduction. It was a homeschool convention, and so it's like this huge, massive convention center. Like and again, you think of homeschool, and you think like the swap meet, and like it's a tent, with like 6 weird people
Right.
there, like. And like I'm going down this elevator, and it's like this world. It's like, oh my gosh, like that's the homeschool market. It's like all these different educational books, all these different systems. That was my first introduction into it. And then I remember I taught at college in communications. I actually taught business school, marketing, management, film and media, and then I was teaching communications freshman class. Loved that. And this is so interesting because there was class about 30, maybe 25, 30 students. And there's this one girl, she sat up in front, 18, 19 years old or whatever. And, it's just really nice, very, very, very well sat, and so her first speech, because you could talk about anything you wanted, I think it was like a 7-minute speech, was about the stigma of the homeschool market and or the homeschool educational system, and what she went through being homeschooled. And she's like extremely smart. I think she was ranked 3rd in California for surfing. I mean, just like amazing. But that was kind of my first time. I'm like, really? Like, I didn't know it had that stigma to it. And again, like you said, they're going to counter that. Anything that goes against their system, they're going to counter it. And the best meme I saw, I think, was in 2021, and it said it was like a two pictures, and the top picture said our what we thought of homeschool moms last year, and it was like these 6 women dressed in gray with their hair like in a bun on this like weird deck, like almost Amish, kind of just sitting there. And then it said what we think of homeschool moms this year, and it was like it was a still from the Wonder Woman movie, like with the sword, and the shield. Uh-oh.
Yeah, we cut out
And
for a second. So go back a minute. Like both of our screens went off. So
oh, okay.
just go, yeah, like
Yeah,
rewind for like 30 seconds.
yeah, I'll just do the meme that I saw like in
Yes.
2021, which I think absolutely expresses it. But it said our idea of homeschool moms last year, and the upper picture was like these 6 women dressed in like gray with their hair in a bun on this like old wooden deck, almost Amish looking. And it said
Right.
what we think of homeschool moms this year, and it was the still from the Wonder Woman movie. Like these 4
Yeah.
women, like with a sword, like gorgeous women, like, with like a shield and a sword. And I thought, like, that's so perfect, because it's like
Right.
homeschool moms rock. And I think, too, for your audience to know this, homeschooling does not mean that one of you has to stay home. There's no reason you can't do that. There are so many different models. So instead of dropping them off at, a school, you'll drop them off in a homeschool group. Or
Right.
there's charter systems where it's involved. It's like a hybrid model. Or you can
Yes.
do stuff where it's like you got 5 parents, and maybe you work, Tuesday through Friday, for 40 hours or 35 hours. You take Monday off, and you're teaching the kids art, and it's maybe 10 of them. And then Tuesday, this one teaches science or whatever. I mean, there's so many different ways to do it that you don't
That's
have to
right.
certainly like quit your job and we both have to work. Totally get it. And so I'm just a huge proponent of it. I have no personal stock in it, but
Right.
when something works, I love it, so.
Well, and it's important for kids. And I think that parents are afraid of, I can't quit my job. How are we going to do that? Because they do think that they have to be the one that is educating them. And so, like you're saying, it could be one day a week. It doesn't even have to be that, but there are communities wherever people are that they could look into, because there's several here in San Diego, and it's
Yes.
great because then you can feel like a relief, because it's like almost like they're just like gritting their teeth sending their kids to school, but feel there's no other option, and there definitely is.
Absolutely. There's tons of options, and there's nothing more important. And I'm sort of stating the obvious, but we've all sort of gone off the reservation. Um, some of us might have gotten lazy, or it happened on our watch and it shouldn't have. So much.
Right.
So be it, right? Let's fix it. But the point is there is nothing more important than your child's education. It doesn't have to be a top private school or whatever. But I mean, oh my gosh, especially at that sort of 8, 9, 10 years old, it's so critical. And you got to capture before that sort of 12 years old. And then once it's 13, it's kind of a different aspect of it. And so, I mean, I still remember my 6th grade class like it was yesterday, because it was a phenomenal elementary school. It was private. I mean, sorry, it was public in Corona del Mar. It was actually Corona del Mar Elementary School. It's no longer there. It's now like multi-million-dollar homes. But
Right.
but it was like, I mean, this teacher was wonderful. She's very creative. And I remember like we broke up in groups and we were like growing our own stuff outside. And she just gave us like great freedom, like with our desk. We could bring in stuff from home and have like our own desk and stuff. And then it was like a writing assignment. She gave us a writing assignment worth 1/3 of our grade for the semester. And we had to write a book. And it had to be like at least 20, 25 pages, but not like today's, it's like you write out a paragraph, you could have a picture, but it's like,
Right.
it was like horrifying. What do you write about? And it was
Yeah.
like at 12 years old, I learned you write about what you know and you write about what you love. And I love James Bond movies. And so my first official quote unquote book was called James Bond, Eat Your Heart Out. I was a 12-year-old secret agent working for the British government, living in a manor house in southern England. I had a butler, of course, Stevens, and I drove a red Ferrari. And this will date me, but my partner was Jacqueline Smith from Charlie's Angels. And this villain was on the loose throughout Europe. And so I get the call, and it's like, we need you. And so it's like this high James Bondish action adventure. And I finally corner him in Switzerland, and I win the day. And it's
Oh my
just
God.
and now fast forward 40 years later, Britfield and Lost Crown, which we believe will surpass the Harry Potter series in the next 8 to 10 years. And I attribute a lot of it to that teacher.
Yeah.
And to that class. So.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, do you feel like that brought you into wanting to write? I mean, obviously you've had that gift from the time you were a kid. And I think even kids do anyway, because their imaginations are like, oh my gosh, they're incredible. I mean, that's
They're
why they'll
extraordinary.
like, yeah. I mean, just playing around, they can be like, we're in a castle and this is, I mean, it's like they can see it all around them, and just really embody that. And we just need more of it and more, so I think it's great that you're doing this for children, but it's also to inspire even people who aren't children, adults that can, get back into that creative realm. Because like there is no age limit of when this
No.
can be. And I think they want us to think that that's it. Like, well, you shouldn't be doing this right now or whatever. They want to kind of determine what we do in our lives. And I think that it's just really neat that you're doing this and that kids are so incredibly, just riding the wave with you. I mean, and the questions that they've asked, like, what the heck, I mean, you're just not expecting
It's
that from them. And
brilliant.
it's, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I bet it inspires you to want to do more and more. I mean, do you think after these series you're going to continue to like go into a whole other maybe type of series or even continue the series? I mean,
Not sure. It's interesting. I'll say this: that children will never know what they're capable of doing until you allow them a chance to do it, an opportunity to do it. And the only two distinctive things that makes a difference in a children's life is environment and opportunity. Nothing else. And you don't even need to throw money at it. You know what I mean? Because it's like, and there's no excuse that you're not spending more time with your kids and giving them as many wonderful opportunities. Take them to the museum once a month, and just for an hour, and
Right.
just concentrate on 1 or 2 rooms, and then afterwards go grab a hamburger. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, make it fun.
Right.
And then ask them, what was your favorite picture, in this room, and why? Take them, walk the shores, the tide pools. Take them to the park. Fly a kite. Take them to the library once a month, and do like a topic. Maybe it's Europe, and you pick some fun books or something, or videos or something. You give them as much exposure to this stuff as possible to see what's going to stick, what's going to fit. So to come back full circle to your question, I didn't in 6th grade, I didn't say, oh my gosh, I want to be an author. But those seeds were planted and they never left me. And then suddenly, 12 years ago, it found me again and blossomed into the next quarter of a century of my life. So, but yeah, so the movies will keep us busy for the next, decade or so. We're working on a couple of television programs right now that are in development, which is exciting. And then there's the whole product side of things, and we're in development of, and again, it's not monetizing it, but it's what's cool about it is that the products that are based on this family friendly type of content, culture, history, right? Instead of having your whole room with vampires or witchcraft and wands and spells. Are you freaking kidding me? And it's interesting too. I remember years ago, one of my friends, her daughter Iris, loves the Britfield series. She read book 1 like 7 times. And Barbara's her name. And she said, Barbara's now turned her room into an explorer room. And I thought, I don't know what that looks like, but how cool is that?
Right.
And literally this morning, it was really sweet because we're just pre-selling book 4. And so like a lot of, pre-sales are coming in like from all over the world, which is kind of cool, all over the nation. And I got an email last week from a couple, and she's like, oh, we just absolutely love, they're in Iowa, I think. It's a church group or something. She goes, love your series. My son, Jacob, absolutely loves the Britfield series. He goes, but unfortunately we lost the 3 signed books because it was, in a flood that we had. It's been a tough year. And so obviously I shipped him 3 books, the trilogy signed last Friday. But she got back to me this morning and she said, oh, Jacob's just so excited. She goes, he wants to start to travel. And he's thinking, once he graduates from high school, maybe he could start to travel along where Tom and Sarah went and stuff. And see, that's the kind of stuff that we're doing. And just really inspiring kids. And so it's really fun. So
I love that. Well, and we're coming up on the end here. I wanted you to, if you want to tell your Gene Wilder story.
Oh yeah. Thanks. Good memory. I kind of forgot about that, and I'm a big Gene Wilder fan, and he's got a fascinating history behind him. And but I read a lot of biographies too on authors. I mean, I'm doing my research. I read Ian Fleming, the creator of the James Bond series, so I know all about his background. A fascinating biography, 600 pages on Roald Dahl and his life. I mean, you can't make that stuff up. It explains a lot, and it's very interesting. And then and it was it was his book, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and they ended up calling it Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory because of the title and the timing of it and stuff. And so Gene Wilder was kind of just coming into his own. I think he'd done The Producers or something like that. And so they set up this casting thing up at the Plaza Hotel in New York. And Wilder came in, and frankly, the producers really wanted him. And normally you don't put all your cards on the table. You know what I mean? You kind of say, okay, well, we'll get back to you. So he came in and he read, and like he was leaving, and they were chasing him in the hallway and said, we want to give you the role. We want you to give the role. And Gene Wilder said, he goes, okay. He goes, I'll do it under one condition. He goes, and he read the script. He goes, at the very beginning when he's walking out, I want him to start to limp. And then he goes, the cane gets stuck, and he starts to fall forward. And then he rolls into a somersault and takes his hat off. And he said, from that point on, you'll never know if he's serious or kidding. And I thought, what a great, isn't it true? Like, and I just thought, like, wow, like what an instinct, right? It's like, because it's like, you don't know if he's being, through the whole movie, you don't know when he's kidding and when he's not. And I just thought that is just the coolest sort of interesting story. And I know it was revealed on a recent biography on Netflix on him, but I actually had read that prior to that biography. Which is very interesting. So it's just kind of a fun story. And
I had no idea.
And real quick too, at the very end, remember, which is probably my favorite scene, when they come in and they're like, they're the ones that, and he's sitting in his office and he's at his desk and he's crouched over, and they wanted to get their, chocolate for a lifetime, and he said, no, sir, you guys, went into that room, and now I've got to clean the whole thing, and he freaks out, and he goes, they weren't, he goes, the actors weren't expecting that. You know what I mean? he literally laid it on him. You know what I mean? Like, and so their
Yeah.
reaction like is totally real. And I just thought that was kind of cool. But and then also the kid just puts the candy there, and it's just like,
Right. That's neat. No, that's funny because
so
you never know what they add as an actor to that, and I never would have thought that he, was a part of that. So it's neat because that part of those things are what make the movie the movie. You know?
the stuff behind the scenes is fascinating. Like the
Yeah.
true story behind it. Just as a footnote, like Die Hard, which is probably one of the best action adventure movies. That was actually written as a series that was developed for Frank Sinatra, but he aged out of it.
Wow.
And yeah, eventually became one of the most successful movies. You have all this stuff behind the scenes. Oh, The Bodyguard with Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston. That was actually written 10 years prior for Steve McQueen and Diana Ross. Isn't that interesting?
Not weird because then you think, well, what would that movie be like if they played those parts? You know what I mean? Would it have been as good? You just never know. But oh my gosh, well, Chad, I'm so glad that you joined me today and shared with my audience all of the great work that you're doing. I look forward to reading these books and I need to talk to the homeschooling areas here locally and see if they can bring this into their, the schools so that kids can, be inspired there and just really get to go on these adventures that you've created.
Yeah, we're working on it. We for 5.5 years has been a soft launch for the Whitfield series. As of July last month, we've just gone global. In fact, we launched in Britain in June, so we're rolling across all of Britain. We've already sold the international rights to Poland, which is our beachhead in Eastern Europe. We're about to lock in South Korea, Japan, and even India for the series. And what is interesting too is we're already in thousands of schools, and we're being taught in hundreds of schools. We have an 83-page study guide based on academic standards. Book one's designed to be taught in the classroom over a semester or a couple of months. So
I love that. Thank you for doing this because the children are our future, and we got to build them up so that we can have a brighter future,
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, and then for your audience, anything you can do to support us, we appreciate it.
Yes,
Or get
please.
the word out. It's a great book. I mean, they're wonderful books to read for your grandkids, for your kids, even for yourself. 55% of our audience are adults. I get feedback from literally around the world, from the Netherlands to New Zealand to Australia to Brazil to South Africa. It's pretty cool. So, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And so they can go to Britfield.com, right, for more?
Yeah, that's the best way to do it in the sense of that, because you can get signed books. We're on Amazon. You can find us on most of the platforms and stuff, which is fine and it's easy. But I'm still signing books, and I won't be doing that much longer. Probably not much longer, because I'm getting. In fact, next week is when I go full throttle for the next 6 months on the movie, as far as focus. Now that book 4 is out of my way, and I'm in Long Island right now on a Whitfield event for the last 4 days. I fly back tomorrow and stuff, and then full focus on the movie and stuff. And then again too, we're just launching globally, so a lot of things are happening right now, which is exciting.
Yes, absolutely. And I'd love to have you back when you've got some when they're coming out, and just to share with the audience so we can get it out there further.
I would love it.
Awesome. Well, great. Thank you for joining me. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Join me next time where I bring you more truth, love, light, and all of the good things. God bless everybody. Thank you, Chad.
Thank you.